Hi, welcome to Wednesday and happy St. Patrick's Day. And in all honesty, this is the closest thing to green I have, but I do have a pretty green St. Patty's hanky. Okay, we're going to keep the theme going like we did from this morning at 10 o'clock with little folk, leprechauns, that kind of thing. And, it was years before I figured out what this other realm of stuff that was going on in houses. They were obviously not ghosts, but I couldn't get a handle on it. And this is right after this happened, this particular house that I talk about is when I started putting two and two together. And so this is what happened. It was a farmhouse out in very rural. I mean, you couldn't see another farmhouse, nothing, a barn, nothing, probably within 3 miles of these people's houses. It was built in the 20s. It had some outbuildings on it, a couple barns, store equipment. It was a working farm, not animals. It was soy and wheat and that kind of thing that they plowed up hay. 4 children, 2 boys, 7 and 8, and 2 little girls. They were 4 and 5. And these people had lived in the house. Probably they moved in when the 8-year-old was about just turned a year old, so she was pregnant with the 7-year-old. And she really never had any problems in the house. It was a strange house, however, inasmuch as, well, I call it strange because when I went out to the house for the first time, and I had been out there 2 times, but when I had gone out for the first time, there was a ghost there and got rid of, actually 2 ghosts, got rid of it. One was somebody that had worked on the land years around the late 1800s, and another one was actually a relative of her husband's. So cleared them up. The house was protected as usual. And when I was going around with her to put the seeds up, because Ted wasn't with me then, she had her washer and dryer in the funniest place. It was like in a hallway. It just didn't belong there. But it's people's houses. They do what they want. And I said to her, do you have any doors that go, any doors from the basement? She goes, well, it's a dirt floor cellar. No, we do not. They called it a cellar, not a basement. And I said, I said, do you have one of those? And I know there's a name for it, and I don't know what the name is, but I call it the Wizard of Oz door, where they open the door up and going down into the cellar. She says, no, we don't have one of those either. And I said, okay. I said, so we don't have to go downstairs in the basement. Then she goes, oh, no, and we wouldn't anyway. And I said, why's that? She said, well, she says, do you think it's strange that my washer and dryer are up here? And I said, well, it's your house. You can do whatever you want. She said, this is the problem. She said, this is such an old house that the basement walls are field stone. And it was short. It was maybe 4.5 feet high. That was it. There was a room down there that was a coal bin for the coal furnace at the time. And there was a root cellar. And I think that's probably where they kept like potatoes and stuff over the years. And there was another small storage area with shelving in it, she had said. But other than that, they didn't keep anything down there because when they moved in, she did move her washer and dryer down the basement because there was a setup for it. And she had diapers, cloth diapers for her babies. And the very first winter, it was as soon as she started going down there and doing laundry, and the furnace would click on because they had switched over from a coal to a regular gas furnace, and the hot water tank was down there. The other room down there was the well room because they had a well. And but apparently with the dryer and all the heat down the basement cellar, that snakes lay eggs in fieldstone. And as soon as it got warm and damp down the basement, these snakes would hatch and come out of the fieldstone, and they were like all over the dirt floor in the basement until they would kill them or they would die. So she couldn't take that, and she moved the washer and dryer upstairs. Personally, I would have sold the house, but that's me. And so she said, until then, and I said, no, I totally understand. If that had been my house and I couldn't move, I'd put the washer and dryer in the bedroom if I had to. So no, don't do snakes. So, okay. So she said, did the house, and the kids were, like I said, 8 and 7, and the little girls were 4 and 5. She told me, she said, now what are we going to do? She says, we are having the house raised so that it's a tall ceiling, concrete floor, and they're putting concrete over the fieldstone. She said, so that we can use the basement. It'll be a dry basement, and I could move my washer and dryer downstairs. She said, what do I do about that? And I said, nothing. I says, because there won't be any opening, so just, raise it up and see what happens. She said, okay. I says, when are you going to do this? She said, we're going to start probably in about 4 months. I said, okay. Left. That was it. 6 months later, I get a phone call from her. She says, Marianne, something is going on in this house, and I have no idea what. She said, do you remember? I says, yeah, snakes in the basement. She goes, right. She says, we've got construction people here. The house is all jacked up. They're doing the walls. They're changing everything around downstairs. It's going to be really nice. She said, but my kids are being so weird. She said, my kids have never, ever came and slept with us in the middle of the night. Now all 4 of them want to sleep in our room. She said that the kids were afraid. Now this is what was happening. She says something was coming in and out of the closet of the boys' room. Covers were being ripped off the bed. The kids were being roared at, like rawr, that kind of thing. They never saw anything. They just heard stuff. They saw glowing eyes, like red eyes. And they were on the second story of this house. The kids' bedrooms, all 3 of the bedrooms actually, were up on the second floor. And she said the boys will go in the girls' room, she says, but then the girls start screaming and crying that there's a hairy man looking at them, and he's got red eyes. And he's even standing on the outside of the house on something and looking in through the window. Their toys were being broken. It was a mess. And I could pick up on nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I said, I said, did we miss a door? Did we not get a seat somewhere? She goes, no, I don't think so. She says, but this is why I'm calling. She said, the construction guys were here Friday. She said, this morning they show up. It was Monday. They show up this morning, and there's 3 of them. 2 of them went downstairs. The boss, supervisor, whatever he was, she was pouring him a cup of coffee to take downstairs. And he said, you've been really good about keeping the kids out of the basement, not messing with our tools and everything. It could be dangerous down there. She goes, no, I've never let the kids down there. And he says, well, can you do me a favor? He said, can you keep your grandfather out of the basement? He said, we never hear him come down the steps. We never hear him go back up the steps. But he just stares at us. And he says he says, and I know he's short, and he probably, he says, and she's just staring at him. She says, my grandfather, he says, yeah, a guy maybe 5 foot tall, big long beard, bushy hair, and sort of hunched over a little bit. And she's just staring at him because nobody lived like that in the house. And he said, when we're not here, it must be him going through our tools and everything. He said, the one, we almost sealed up inside the one wall. We didn't know it was in there. So that's when she started thinking about the kids. And then what this guy said, a total stranger. So that's when she called me. And I said, oh, this is too crazy nuts. I mean, she had well water, so we had a seat on the well. And so I went out there. And I couldn't get out there because she was a ways away. I couldn't get out there for about 10 days, 12 days. So I got out there, and I wanted to go when the kids were at school. That's still my rule. For years, I've never changed that rule. And went out there and went in, and the crew was downstairs. I actually never even saw them. They were down there working. And she said, it has gotten 10 times worse since I talked to you. She said the older boy got pulled out of bed, and when he came back, he thought he fell out of bed. He went to the bathroom. He came back, and all of his covers, his sheets, everything was off of his bed, and his brother was still sleeping. And the little girls are crying because somebody is underneath their bed, kicking their mattress and shaking the bed. And she says, since this has happened, she says, and I knew you were coming out, she says, I've been letting him sleep on the floor in our bedroom. She says, something is just going on. And so I says, I want to go upstairs. So we went upstairs. She says, I didn't clean this. I wanted you to see it. Went into the boys' room first. They had Venetian blinds on the windows. And they were so messed up, you have no idea. I mean, it was somebody took a club and hit the Venetian blind down the middle. All the slats were all bent in. Somebody had pulled the cord and they were cockeyed on the window. And they had posters on the wall. She said, yesterday these posters were still on the wall. Now they're on the floor. She said, and the boys have not been in their bedroom. And she says, where do you see the girls' room? I went into the girls' bedroom. Every drawer was open. Clothes were thrown everywhere. They didn't have Venetian blinds on those walls or windows. They had shades. The shades were like all the way at the top. You remember shades? If you let them loose, they would go right up to the top. Well, that's where they were. The curtains rods were cockeyed on the window. The girls had, this is how long ago this was. For those of you that remember pop beads, those little beads, they came in pastels, white, pink, and blue, I think they were. And the girls liked pop beads. And every time they'd go to the 5 and 10 or Uncle Bill's or something, they'd buy a bag of pop beads. And the girls would put all the colors together, dress up their teddy bears. You know what little girls do with that stuff. And they were thrown all over the floor like confetti. And they had this big container where they sat on the one little girl's dresser. And she said, pick up one of those pop beads. And I picked one of them up. Pop beads on one end have a hole, and then on the other end they have like this little thing that sticks out to put in the hole so that you can string them together. Every one of those beads had the part that you put in the hole chewed off. They were all broken. How does a 4 and a 5-year-old do that? They don't. So this was somebody that was really, really, really mean there. And I had no idea how to help them. I did not know what to do. And I apologized. I said, I don't know what to tell you. I said, at the time, this was so many years ago, it was a donation when I would go to somebody's house. I mean, this was a long time ago. And I said, and I gave her back her money. I says, I feel terrible for you. I says, here's your money. I said, I says, keep the seeds up. I said, I don't know. I said, if I run across what this could be, I will let you know. I says, I was at a loss. Then it was about 6 weeks later, I had done another house, and they were having me come to their brother's house. So she called me from her house, and she said, can you go to my brother's house? And I says, well, I need to talk to him from that house. I did, and they had a portal. So I went ahead and made an appointment, and they had an outbuilding that they had old farm equipment in it. It was another small little hobby farm, you would call it. But he liked older equipment, and so at auctions and stuff, he would buy this equipment. And went in the house, and they said, we don't know what's going on. They said, the equipment in the barn was on its side. We don't know how that happened. All the hay from the hayloft was thrown on the ground. They did have a couple horses. The horses are whinnying, making noise in the middle of the night, stomping in their stalls. Out in the pasture, we found barbed wire. We have no idea where that came from. The one horse ran over it and cut its leg. And I'm thinking back to myself, gosh, this is like what happened in that other house. So there was a portal, and the man was there from the portal. And I knew he couldn't go out and do any of the damage in the barn because they can't leave the four walls of the house when they come out of a portal. So I said to this guy, who had been a murderer, by the way. I mean, he was not a good guy. He was a bad guy. And he had been put to death by a prison in Texas and ended up in this house. And I said to him, I said, and there was some damage in the house, not very much. It was mostly more outside. And I said to him, do you have any idea what's going on? I said, is there another spirit that's around here someplace that you've seen and they're not here now? Not being a psychic, I need to talk to somebody and get information. And they said, this guy says to me, oh no. He said, you should see the weird stuff that's in this house. There's these hairy things that look like tree stumps that walk around. And there's these little tiny things that mess with the pump down in the basement. He said, they are mean, and he says, if I come out and they're here, I leave. He says, I will not stay with them. So now this man is explaining to me what this is. And now I'm freaking out because it's like, what do I do about that? So, and it was probably a year later that I ran across somebody that did have knowledge, that knew about the solution and what they had to do, which is on my website, the recipe for it. So I'm not going to go through that now. But absolutely, again, anything that like this, what goes on with the small folk, the wee folk, you have to take care of. I can't do that. They are not dead. They are popping out of another dimension. So, but that's how I learned about this. And it's been a number of years. And I have no idea why the wee folk don't like earthbound spirits. And they, for some reason, do not live in the same house together. And it started to worry me because I was thinking, gosh, I'm getting rid of these ghosts that are causing problems, and then these little terrible creatures are coming in. Do I quit clearing houses of ghosts? I mean, what's worse, them or the ghost? Well, luckily we found a solution for that. But so they can cause a lot of problems in people's houses. So just be aware of it, that, listen to your kids is really, really important. Okay, next week we will do another case, and this was a little bit long, I know, but I wanted to get the information out there so that if this is happening in your house, you know what it is. Have a great week. Thanks.